You're watching Taste of Victory.
Alright guys, so this will definitely be a shorter tier list video just because X1 doesn't even really shake up the meta that much. The rich get richer basically I think is going to be the big takeaway because we're in the booster set 6 meta right now, double diamond in English. People are wondering how are the decks that are top right now going to do into X1, and like I said, they just get better. We're going to start right away with Aguaman, Bond of Bravery, and this is easily still a tier 1 deck. Well honestly, in BT6 you could honestly argue this deck was tier 2, tier 1.5, just because we didn't get the starter decks until so much later than the equivalents of when Japan got them, and the starter deck had so many important tools for Aguaman. It hurts so much more not having them than it did for Gaboumon. So this thing, if anything, it goes up a tier. It definitely becomes like one of the top tier threats because you have ways to deal with security because of Delicate Plan. You have much more threatening security with the new options. You have better consistency with the options introduced in the starter deck. You have the option to warp to Gallantmon as your backup mega if you want to build that way. It just has a lot of answers to a lot of things, and the only really bad, terrible matchups it has would be like Black Royal Knights or big black blockers, and that won't be too popular of a deck just because it does pretty bad into a lot of other stuff. So you won't have its like worst matchup following you around. It's going to be a really good, powerful deck that's going to be annoying to fight against because you got a threatening security and a threatening boss monster. Easily tier 1 if it was like struggling to be tier 1.5 in BT6. After that, we got its brother-in-arms. We got Gaboumon, Bond of Friendship, and this deck, you guessed it, it is still tier 1 as well. I don't know if I put it above Bond of Bravery, probably, just because of sheer representation. This is probably going to be like the cheaper deck to put together. It might see more results as a result of that. But basically, you have the almost identical build, like basically just the same build, and you have a couple new tools you can run in it. For example, mainly the main thing people are going to do is drop some old options, maybe drop a couple champions, and toss in the new Ice Wall card, which is only 1 cost, and then every time your opponent swings, they lose 2 memory. It's just an unbelievably broken card for how cheap it is. It really helps you stall to get victory, to get, you know, that 1 extra swing you need or that 1 extra piece you need to be able to warp. It's an unfair card, and it's probably going to get hit in the mid-January ban list that Bandai announced already. So we're going to see how that goes. But until then, at least, this deck is absolutely busted and only becomes better. You also have analog, which you consider running, because when your turn ends, if you leave them at 1 memory and then your bond dies, you get the memory off of analog. It is still your turn. Choke them again with Ice Wall or something. It's just so crazy good. Still tier 1, still powerful, still oppressive. After that, we got its clone. We got Ancient Gaboumon. A lot of people think this deck doesn't offer much over the other one, or it's the same, basically identical deck. They're pretty different in what they want to do. This deck is definitely a lot slower too, I would say, so you have more pieces you want to see, but because of that, you can actually push a higher ceiling and play through things that maybe Bond couldn't. With analog, it's really cool. You got some spicy combos with analog to be able to, once again, keep turn on your end after your ancient gets deleted, and then it plays something after it dies. You know, it plays another hybrid, so that's really cool too. It's still a really good deck, but I do think it is below Bond just because Bond has better consistency, pure Bond decks. And this one, the stuff that it is able to play past isn't too big of a threat in the meta to Bond right now, you know, like stuff like blockers and stuff like that. But you do have more explosive plays on average here. I still do think that consistency hit, you're adding more pieces than you really need. I think this puts, I want to say this is still a tier 1 deck, but I almost want to put this in tier 1.5 just because like those decks that are basically identical to it in spirit are doing what it does just a little more efficiently. So as we saw in BT6, it only got like 1 top per tournament as representation as opposed to like 7 bonds. So as of now, I'm going to go ahead and put this in 1.5 just because the other bond decks get that much stronger. Well, this one does too, for sure. I think the boost that the other bonds deck just push it that much more over it. So maybe we would come back to this, but for right now, I think tier 1.5 is perfectly accurate. Now we're starting to get, you know what, let me move this up so we can do them all at once, but we're starting to get into the new decks introduced in X1 Classic Collection. First up is Machinemon. So this is like a sideboard slash machine focused deck where you're trying to fill up your trash to eventually hardcast this new Machinemon, and then it adds 5 red or black cyborg Digimon to its sources and gets a bunch of awesome effects based off those inheritables. So this deck is going to be good depending on what is meta, because in Japan this deck was actually taking quite a few tops. It's a good answer to security control because they're giving you all this much memory, so the hard casting of Machinemon doesn't feel that terrible, and then also you get the memory back off of its effect anyways, so you sometimes end up even not passing turn with how much memory security control can give you. And because it can protect itself from destruction, it can't be DP minus, it was a good answer to those decks when it started to pick up popularity. It's also just a really good strong deck outside of that matchup. I do think how much popularity security control will have here will end up playing into how much this deck ends up seeing play. But Mastaman is a fan favorite villain, you know, wasn't he like the final boss of Digimon World 1 or something like that? Or a boss at least. And then the Inheritables are really good. You have a lot of great tools introduced in X1 to fill up that trash for it. I think this is very solidly a tier 1.5 deck, just because I think giving that much memory over to decks in this meta, they have ways to either play around it or to answer it. And the thing is, Mastaman does have tools like, you know, Alter S to respond to how you respond to their action. So if you go wide with all the memory you give, they could Alter S you, for example. They do have responses, so I do think this is a deck that is able to compete. But just for like its playstyle, I think it's just too slow compared to the top decks currently. The bonds are just insane, especially with Ice Wall and all that stuff to slow you down even further. So I think this deck is comfortably 1.5. We'll have to see how the meta shakes up to see if it's a true #1 tier 1 contender though. After that, we got X1 Angels Classic Collection. So this is stuff like the new Angemon line, the new Magnadramon line. They have like DP boosting and security boosting, and then you evolve into your boss monster, which is like old Serafi or the new Serafi in X1, and you get like +1 security, or I think it's like unconditional recover too. And because of that extra DP boost that carried over from the Magna Angemon in X1, you get some beefy guys on your opponent's turn, or on your turn when you're swinging for security and stuff like that. Thing is, this deck is really slow. The Inheritables in it aren't too impactful either. It's nothing crazy. I think it's a fun rogue deck that will definitely be taking your locals. You know, if you know your matchups, you could definitely take locals with this just fine. But I think it really does too little for what it is, and it's just too slow. So I think this is I think it's better than just like garbage tier, just existing. So I would have to put this in tier 3 at the very least, because I do think you could steal some wins with this. I think it's probably being a little generous, because X1 Angels just don't have a lot of draw power, don't have a lot of synergy in like getting their own effects live outside of the DP boosting, security boosting, and stuff like that. I just think they're too slow for what they want to do. After that, we got Myotismon, extra juice in X1. A lot of people are nicknaming this Retaliation Rush, because yeah, you chumming out rookies and they have like retaliation on them, but they only are active when you have like Myotismon, I think it is, on the field and stuff like that. So this deck is focused around getting those early retaliations out, getting your boss monster retaliation so they can't swing over it without being threatened. This runs into the same problem with X1, where it's just too slow and it's not too impactful. I think they do finally get a way to force battle, like be able to swing into your opponent's unsuspended Digimon. So like that was a big problem with retaliation. If you wanted to make it an archetype, is your opponent has to play into it. If they simply don't, you can't really do anything to retaliate them. I think there's some card in this set that now lets you do swings at unsuspended Digimon under some crazy condition, but it is like a condition you have to meet. I don't remember it being too easy. The rest of the deck is kind of slow, and your boss monsters aren't too crazy of a payoff just because of how balanced they are out with their memory costs. So I think this runs into the same issue as X1 Angels, where you're just like too slow. This just needs more support. I think it could definitely be good with upcoming cards. Like eventually, like the right support for it will put this up a tier, but for now, yeah, it's just too slow for what it does. After that, we got Untitled. So Untitled gets a lot of new support in the set, specifically for it. It's not like previous sets were like, oh, here's a new card. It just happens to work in Untitled. It gets new XVmons, it gets new Steamons, and this is weird, but the cards, it gets like, it's one of the main decks in the set, and I would arguably say this doesn't really push it up a tier. I don't know how to describe it, but in all the testing I've done, this really feels like a lateral support rather than vertical support to put it up. It just like, it strengthens its game plan now, but that game plan is so solitaire-ish, and you still have very few ways to effectively respond to opponents' threats that are putting pressure on your board or that are keeping you away from lethal other than blockers, because you have a lot of great ways to deal with blockers now. But like in terms of removal, yeah, it's still kind of just like you have to hope to rush them down and beat them before they get a board stage that you can't get past. So like, yeah, it improves the consistency a bit and your aggression, but your actual power ceiling doesn't really get improved all that much despite all the boosts. So I still think just because everything got so fast at the top, you know, the bonds are just so crazy because they're basically Rookie Rush in disguise, and now you got tools to slow you down in Ice Wall and in all the threatening security that Bond Bravery has. It's just not, Impeldramon's just not as fast as it used to be, so I think this is still a solid tier 2 deck. Like you could take, I mean, Dan Bang, right? At the beginning of BT6, did he take the first one with Impeldramon, or was that like late BT5, I'm trying to remember. But yeah, I know for a while he was like known for getting tops with this deck because he totally can. It's still a great deck. I just don't think it has the power ceiling to compete with the top tier decks in this meta. Or on the same level, because I definitely think it can compete, just not on the same level. You're gonna have to work more for it. And because of that extra work, it's tier 2, but definitely tier 2 is still good. That still gets you wins. After that, we got Lilith Loop. So Lilith Loop in this meta, in this set, Classic Collection, gets Analog Boy. And Analog Boy is insane. Before this, we've been running like, what do you call it? You run Nokia? No, not Nokia. It's the other one from Cyber Sleuth. The redhead guy that is 2 memory. That guy. Or you run Manoa, the Eospan tamer. I can't believe I'm blanking on the 2-cost tamer red hair guy's name. But yeah, you run him, Takumi, I think it's Takumi, and then you run Manoa as one of your choice of white tamers. You run that for Mega Digimon Fusion because you need a white Digimon or tamer to be able to play it, to go into your free swords and start setting the loop off. So there was arguments for both because Manoa guarantees you 3 memory that is important in this deck, and then Takumi helps you dig for them. So they both had their arguments, but then you get Analog Boy, which is just so much better than both because it is only 2 to play. It searches your stuff that you need to get into the deck, and that's what this deck wants: more consistency to see all the pieces, because it's like a 3 to 4 card combo or something like that. So you definitely want to see all your pieces to be able to do the loop. But then also, instead of bottom decking the stuff that you don't grab in your search, it sends it to the trash, which fuels Lilithmon's effect, which fuels a bunch of other 10 cost requiring effects in this deck. So that's really amazing. And then if it's deleted, your level 5 or higher Digimon, you gain a memory, you open another egg slot, maybe a potential extra draw, etc. off of Analog Boy, all for 2 memory, and setting off Mega Digimon Fusion. Like, it's such an unbelievable card. It increases consistency so much. It's huge. Like, it is genuinely a huge addition. That paired with the stuff we got in Booster Set 6, like the Jinkakumon promote package, yeah, all that together comes to make a really powerful Lilithmon deck, and yeah, I love it. I think before, what would people put this on? There was like in tier 2 and a bunch of other ones. I do feel like the problem is I kind of want to say this is the top of tier 2. I almost really do want to put this in tier 1.5, but I do think like you just get rushed down so hard by the bonds, and then the huge blocker you get off of Machine Drum on itself makes it pretty hard for you to like actually get your loops off if you're waiting too long, or like the game goes too long and you haven't gotten your loop off yet, and you have to try and survive past that blocker to be able to get it off, you know, because you have to attack with your sword. And whatever other level 6 you have out. So I do think it kind of hits a ceiling against the top decks, but it's really good, and it definitely can tech. Like, you can tech for that matchup and have it like pretty even. So, you know what, I'm going to be generous here just because Lilithmon is a really cool card and I've loved it since the introduction of the game. So I'm going to be here and put it low end of tier 1.5 right now because it does have a good answer to the rest of the meta. It does have a lot of great consistency, and you are able to tech for your bad matchups like the bonds. So it definitely comes down to player skill, I think. It's definitely a deck to go take you far. After that, we got Titamon. So Titamon, a lot of, I've been in Discord servers like Fong Zero server, my server too. People have been in the Taste of Victory server talking about this deck that everywhere. People are trying to make Titamon work. They love this card. And it does get some cool stuff. I've seen some cool stuff like you can do MDF shenanigans. You can do the new win rate. 60% is a new white option introduced in this card, which Lilithmon also uses, so that's another point for it. But yeah, you can do some pretty crazy stuff with this. Like, that does have value over Lilithmon because you get more aggression for your swings. You can expand board, not as fast as it can, but you still can do it pretty regularly, you know, and then your calls are really great. Like, you have Ogremon to destroy level 4s lower on play, the Jinkakumon inheritables popping rookies and stuff. So paired with your aggressive swings, more aggressive than Lilithmon is because of all the security plus you get off of Titamon itself, it's still a good deck. The stuff introduced in X1 helps it a lot. I am going to put this at the bottom of tier 2 for now because it is aggressive and it does have consistency thanks to a lot of stuff introduced in this set. After that, we got Mastaman. So Mastaman is popularly a purple deck. We saw some yellow variants in BT6 because there was a lot of cool stuff introduced in BT6 that paired with discarding your security. So it naturally, discarding security on Digivolution helped a lot with those cards. Yellow Mastaman is tier 3, I would argue. Doesn't really change anything here. And then purple Mastaman also doesn't literally doesn't really gain anything from this deck. Like, you usually use it as a side mega, so yeah, anything Lilithmon or Titamon get as a boost are indirectly a boost to Mastaman, but in this meta, it's just now not as impactful. Security control is getting less and less representation, so that security control bonus of discarding security and stuff isn't as impactful as it once was. I think if you're gonna run this as a side mega, it's still perfectly serviceable, but it definitely has a lot harder competition now. And as a main deck boss monster, it's yeah, it's okay. I would put this at the top of tier 3 because it's just a lot slower than it once was. And that's unfortunate for it. I definitely don't think it's a bad card by any means, and it's still a great utility card. It's just all these other decks have more utility out of the stuff X1 gave them. They're able to utilize it better. After that, we got green control, so this is like Nidhoggmon, Ancient Troyamon, to like stop your opponents from restanding and then from sending everything suspended to the bottom of the deck. You know, a lot slower, but control focused, and slow in quotation marks because you're still able to cheat Digivolution cost of green. I think this is a fantastic deck, but because your Troya is stopping all the restands off of their bonds, you know. You can bottom deck stuff from Lilithmon before they're able to get to their Mega, because, you know, they have Lady Devi out, they Digivolve into it, trying to cycle, don't hit whatever they need, you know, you could get a Needle Spray, whatever, bottom deck it. So you have some very decent matchups. You can make them work into the top meta decks. But overall, it's just still too slow, because you still gotta hope to draw into those Digizorber ultimates. You gotta hope to see your one of HBD maybe. Otherwise, you're paying the full 5 for Nidhogg if you're gonna do that. Full 5 for Troya. In BT7, it gets a lot more support because Troya, or rather the X1, the hybrid beetles or whatever, help it a little bit with consistency. But right now, yeah, it's just too slow for a control deck even, I would say. So yeah, this is like the top of tier 3 right now, is what I'm going to put this at. Then we got green OTK. So this is aggression. You know, you're using that Palmon, Digi Burst Away, jamming, swing, not worry about security. There is a lot more security bombs at the top because you got Rattlestar in this guy in Bond of Friendship. You have Ice Wall, you have Hammer Spark. Ice Wall just basically being 4 extra copies of Hammer Spark and security. It's so stupid. So, you know, your turn could get ended by that now. You get blown out by all the destruction options in Bond of Bravery. Machine Dramon becomes a giant blocker that you may not be able to Digiburst DP boost your way up past. And then Lilithmon, you're on a timer, which is fine. You have a good matchup against Lilithmon because you just rush it down. You know, they're on a timer too. So you have a bad matchup into a lot of the top tier decks. After that, everything else is kind of slow, or you're kind of equally matched. So it's not terrible, but it's not amazing either. You're a one-trick pony, and if you don't see your pieces, or if you're not able to get past their answer to you, there isn't too much you can really do. So I would say this is, I want to be generous and put this at the bottom of tier 2 just because of the nature of OTK decks. Like, that speed is good in this meta, but green doesn't really end up doing anything because, like, the support it got in the set is really self-contained, and it's more preparing for booster set 7 with the insectoid stuff I mentioned. So if you're a good pilot, you should definitely be able to take some wins with it, but yeah, it's a lot of extra work you gotta put in. So yeah, I think the other tier 2 decks are faster at what it does. I'm gonna put this like at the top of tier 3. After that, we got Commandramon, the D-Brigade. This is Darkdramon. Commandramon is a D-Brigade Digimon. We got the D-Brigade deck. The D-Brigade's cool. People keep trying to make it work every meta, because it did get support until like BT5. After that, you just start putting in like security bombs, Cordramon for that security bomb consistency and stuff like that. It's Rookie Rush in disguise, you know, like the bonds. By that nature, it is like inherently pretty good, just because you're able to play a lot faster than other decks that don't, because you don't follow the level curve. The thing is, there is not much draw power in this variation of the black deck. You don't have too many answers to stuff. You have to hope for your ultimate flares. You have to hope to like get an early Darkdramon and then go into Omnimon Sport Defeat, I think it is, to get some extra removal. But in like mixed builds where you're like kind of like half security control, like I see D-Brigade decks that are like D-Brigade package, and then you got yellow stuff for your security, blue stuff for your security. You definitely have more answers to stuff that way. You know, you hardcast a Magdramon, and now you can play Wyvern's Breath from your hand, you know, as an answer to get rid of stuff. So it's definitely an interesting deck. I almost kind of want to put this at the bottom of tier 2, just by the nature of being Rookie Rush and by having a threatening security. but I think that'd be a disservice to Green OTK, which just got put at the top of tier 3. Because if this is tier 2, then so is Green OTK. But yeah, I think as Rookie Rush, it's kind of less consistent than your actual traditional Rookie Rush. But you make up for that with security bombs. I still think this is a tier 3 deck. Tier 3 not being like the end of the world, but like this is like barely tier 3. Like this and Green OTK are like barely tier 3. Really good when you know what you're doing. It definitely able to pilot it to a good victory. So yeah, not bad decks by any means. You just got to work a lot more than the other top decks. After that, we got Security Control. Security Control actually kind of loses a bit of popularity, I would say, because you got a lot of stuff running around with a Delicate Plan. You have a lot of stuff that, well, not a lot of stuff, but you have a big deck in the meta introduced Machinemon that just protects itself from all you want to do to it. That is certainly a hit. But still, it has a great matchup into everything else. It is still super annoying to have to play into. But yeah, 2 of the 3 really, because 2 of the top decks in the meta are going to have access to ADP, and then Machinemon itself just naturally has immunity to most of what it wants to do, but that is on only that 1 mega, so you're hoping to draw into it. I kind of want to put this into tier 2. I think putting it into tier 1.5 is also kind of a disservice, because even Lilithmon has a good matchup into you, because your games with Security Control go long. You give it a lot of memory to search for its pieces. So like when you're even like struggling and you're going even at best with Lilith Loop, I think you've kind of like fallen off, which is pretty crazy because this was easily like tier 1, tier 0, you know, at some point in the game. Now, I don't think it was ever tier 0, you know, but it's definitely a tier 1, like S tier deck. And now I would say tier 2 is pretty accurate because as the game goes on, Bandai, if you look at the Japanese set, Bandai is printing more options to respond to it, more hate to it, more decks with immunity. So yeah, it just kind of steadily keeps going down. But like just by the nature of it, it's an annoying, stubborn deck. It's going to stick around for a while. It's definitely still a solid top tier 2 deck. After that, we got Shoutmon. This deck just exists. It doesn't gain too much more from this meta. So we got Lord Nightmon next. This deck is insane. It was insane in Booster Set 5. Dan Bang recently topped the regional with it. Did he get straight up first place with it, I think, right? A regional in BT6? Like, the deck can still put in work. It's still a strong deck. There was reasons people were quitting the game over it in Booster Set 5, and apparently as recent as now. There was a reason, because it's a really powerful deck. You are destroying your opponent's board with stuff they can't respond to, because a lot of decks don't have answers to DP minusing to block it, you know? So while you're destroying their board with no real response on their end, your board is just expanding. It's just so, it feels so unfair matching up into it back in Booster Set 5. Now though, everything is kind of brought up to Lord Nightmon's level. Everything kind of has answers to it or equivalent speed. So it's definitely fallen off. I don't think it's a bad deck at all. I just think you have to work a lot more for it. And it literally gets nothing from X1. I don't think there's anything you would toss in this deck from X1. Unless I'm misremembering and forgetting something really generic. But yeah, it's like, it is what it is. It used to be a tier 1 deck. Now I'd put it at the bottom of tier 2. I think it's way above everything in tier 3. It can easily answer all of those. So putting it at tier 3 would be kind of disgraceful. So yeah, bottom of tier 2 for sure. Well, I think I'd put this at least above Titlemon because it's way more consistent, that's for sure. So I think it's a pretty good placing for it. After that, we got Jessamon. So Jessamon is, there's no discussing this. It's tier 1, absolutely. It still is, and it still will be all the way into Japan's X2 meta. Apparently, it's like still in there kicking butt because Kiramon got introduced in Booster Set 8, and that has been giving it such a consistency boost into the latest meta. So yeah, Jessamon is around for a while if you have been keeping up with the Japanese list. So that's why people are speculating that in the X2, or rather in the ban list that we're going to get mid-January, that there might be some kind of hit to Jessamon. I don't think so. I think, well, maybe because like it's been top deck for so long. Like it's been tier 1.5 at the absolute worst for so long. So yeah, but yeah, this thing goes so wide. Those wide Digimon are blockers. It has answers to security control with ADP. It could restand and swing for 4 checks, 5 checks, game in 1 turn. It's stupid strong. And then you could, like, if you want to, you can make it security threatening. You don't need to, because your Digimon boss monster is threatening enough. So yeah, still tier 1. It's an insane deck. However, I would put it below the other bonds in tier 1, just because those guys do not have the consistency issues that Jessamon absolutely has. Yeah, you got the memory boost to help it a bit, and then you got, like, I think there's a Aguaman in this set that helps you with consistency, like searching stuff, and I think that's about it. But yeah, you didn't need that much more. The memory boost is more than enough to help it keep pace. After that, we got also Longmon, kind of just source strip representation in general. Yeah, source strip kind of just exists. It's not until our next set, which is going to be booster set 7, where hybrids are introduced and source strip gets insane because they just stun the heck out of your deck and you can't even play the game, you know? But as of now, yeah, it doesn't do all too much. I think you have an okay matchup into Bonds, actually, because, you know, they're mostly just rookies, so you're actually able to strip sources pretty quick and easily and stun them. But, you know, when the answer to your playstyle is just Digivolve again, that's not hard to counter. So Ocelong source strip right now just doesn't do enough to keep pace. It doesn't really do much of anything, unfortunately. After that, we got Black Royal Knights. Black Royal Knights, so this does have a good matchup into a lot of stuff. Like, straight up, it has a fantastic matchup into Bond of Bravery, because you can't get big enough to get past your blockers. You're clearing their board if they hit Iron Fisted Onslaught or whatever in security. You have good matchups into it. You definitely have good options into it. Kind of same with Bond, but Bond at least like has Bond of Friendship. I mean, kind of same with Bond of Friendship, but at least there you have Rattlestar. At least there you have ways to stall out until you can maybe get an answer with Ice Wall. Kind of the same story with Jessamon, but Jessamon gets so big, you just beat over their blockers. You don't really care about it. As for the rest of the meta, you kind of have an okay matchup into everything. Machine Dramon isn't too hot, but everything else you do kind of okay. I think Black's tools of being these great blockers are inherently really nice. You know, always kind of keeping it on the edge of relevancy nicely enough until we get like actual support in booster set 8. I think it's when they get the X antibody stuff for Black. After that, Machine Dramon is just going to be your Black deck of choice, so it's going to be overshadowed in placements, I think, a lot by that. I think I kind of want to put this in because you can also tech to have a great matchup into Lord Nightmon, as we saw at the end of booster set 5, I think it was. We started seeing a lot of Black decks get toppings because they were building specifically towards Lord Nightmon, and then you have an okay matchup into everything else. So, yeah, I don't know. I want to say like tier 2 might be a little bit too generous for this. So I think we're going to go with the top of tier 3 because it is still pretty slow. But I think having such a great matchup into Bond is going to take you far. Like, you have it really depends on how popular that is, but I think you can make the argument it's the absolute bottom of tier 2, the absolute bottom. I think you can make the argument just because of that great matchup. After that, we got Eospan. So Eospan, we saw a lot of fun with it in booster set 6 because there was a lot of creative builds. You had like pairing it with Bond of Friendship. You had yellow builds, you had black builds, security control builds, blue builds. It's really fun deck. It's the rainbow deck of the game. Eospan gets nothing. Actually, does it get a new? I don't think it gets a new level 6 in this set. It might be booster set 7 where it gets a new level 6 that is a cheaper to evolve into. So that's good. It gets a cheaper level 6 Eospan eventually. But it's not this set that it gets it. I don't think it is. Because it's not like it existed back in the original card game. So there is no classic collection card to print. But yeah, it kind of just does its own thing. It doesn't really do anything. It kind of just... kind of just hopes to high roll and plays its stuff out for free, you know. So I would put it above at the very least, just existing, just because like it has like fun tools you can play around with and create like anti-meta builds. So I think it's fine. I kind of just want to say it just exists because it really does fall off after. I'm gonna say that it just exists because after booster set 6, it really kind of just falls off. Baelstar, How the Mighty Have Fallen, guys, because this was like a $30 card. I don't know if it still is, or it's gone down, or it's gone up, but it's really expensive for what is only really relevant for like one meta until we get maybe more support in X2 in the next extra set in Japan, where it's like Tamer's themes, so you get a lot of Beelsmon stuff in general. Yeah, this deck kind of falls off. Like, it's still good. It's still very good. It's its own kind of thing, but the other decks got way faster. Other decks got a lot of better answers to its shenanigans. And Baelstarmon itself got nothing new, so it doesn't really change much. I think this is I don't want to call this tier 3. I think that's a little underrepresenting it, just because like it does have still like a really solid game plan that once you start getting it going, it's kind of hard to stop the snowballing. So I think at the absolute bottom of tier 2, because the Mighty Have Fallen, this thing got like 3 tops every regional, and Booster had 6, you know, before we got the starter decks. But the starter decks put everything just so far up. I would have put this in 1.5 if this was a BT6 tier list. I don't actually remember what I did put it in my list. I wonder what it was now. You guys can let me know in the comments if you saw it recently. But yeah, this is tier 2, bottom of tier 2. it's definitely fallen. After that, we got the oh, did I forget to put in Gallantmon? So we got the starter decks. They're basically gonna tier in the same place, like your upgraded starter decks. Ulforce is definitely, I think in my opinion, better than the Gallantmon one, because you're basically like a blue mini Jesmon, just without as much of the potential to OTK in that same turn. But yeah, they kind of just exist. They're not really threatening by any means, both of them. This is like the blue and red Gallantmon and Ulforce starter decks. Like I said, I think the Ulforce one is better, but yeah, they don't do too much to keep up with the meta. They're not too powerful. Ulforce is probably like the better of the two, and would be able to like get you some locals wins, and that's about it. After that, we got Diaboromon. So Diaboromon is definitely a slept on deck, because it just keeps getting support, and like the new support in this set is great, because you get a lot of new stuff. And I think you get one at every level. The new Infamon is amazing if you leave it out to make your opponent's Digimon more expensive to Digivolve into. Kiramon gives it more DP boosting. And then you got the new Mega, which has a security effect that lets it play a token out of a security check. And that thing is huge, because if you have that guy on the field and then it reveals a token, you suddenly have 2 blockers out now. It's huge and high rolly, but the thing is, this deck still does rely a lot on seeing like its tamer, like Arata or whatever memory tamer you want to run instead. It lives and dies by it, because then you don't have an easy way to cheat out tokens that fast. You're getting memory choked. You become a lot slower. But yeah, with the pro, and then you got promo Diabolo, so now you're gonna see a lot of representation for it anyways, because that card is so expensive. But if you do have the promo Diabolo, I think it's huge, because like you get your tokens out, and now your tokens can possibly come out for free out of security. You get 3 checks out of nowhere. You know, it's really, really good. It's underrated. I think it's definitely a solid tier 2 deck. Solid tier 2 deck. The thing is, it's just too slow, and it's too dependent on seeing its tamers compared to other decks in this meta. And then after that, we got Rookie Rush. I think Rookie Rush is always just going to be floating around tier 2. I would definitely put this above these two at the very least. Hell, probably above Tight Up, because you have to hope to see Ogre and all that stuff. Otherwise, you get rushed down pretty quick. Probably even above Lord Nightbot, just because it doesn't. You don't have to worry about leveling up. It's a solid tier 2 deck. This thing used to be tier 1, tier S, baby. But yeah, you also have like Rookie Rush and Disguise decks at the top that have more fallback plans, that are more aggressive, that don't die too hard to blockers like Rookie Rush does. You're praying to see Spiral Masquerade basically, and it also gets nothing new in this set. Nothing new for it that I'm aware. I can't think. Maybe you would. I don't know if you would run Analog Boy and Rookie Rush, but I don't see why, because you don't have a low 5 or higher to get value off it. So probably not. So yeah, there's nothing really in it. Just by the nature of cheating the level curve, a Rookie Rush is really ridiculously strong, and always going to be somewhere in tier 2. I feel like at best, as it gets more stuff. And finally, we got Greymon Tribal. It just exists. This deck lives and dies by how popular security control is, because then at the very least, if security control is popular, you can run it as an option. Hope you like match into all of them and just run through them. So yeah, yeah, I think it just exists, because I think it doesn't really do anything until all the other meta decks. Like all the other meta decks do have threatening security right now that you don't want to set off. So being able to shut off those options naturally with your Greymon, and then also with a delicate plan, is really nice. But that's kind of all it's got going. Well, I think I'm kind of underrating it. You know what? Yeah, let's put this at the bottom of tier 3, because like then you have the Greymon package with the security attack +1 star deck Greymon. You got the delicate plan. You got all the security attack pluses outside of the ST Greymon. You got all the DP boosting. You got Blitz Omni. It's definitely could put in work. It definitely depends on the meta call though. So bottom of tier 3, just because you have to rely on your opponent's decks for that. Well, actually, I would definitely put this above the new X1 decks at the very least. But yeah, that's gonna be it. That is the X1 meta. I'm not sure how different this actually looks from our from my BT6 list, but nothing really changes at the top. Truthfully, like not a huge meta shift. I think I had a lot more decks at the top of tier 1, and now they kind of got into 1.5 or the top of tier 2 previously. But yeah, that's just how stronger the bonds get. Just one being able to answer a lot of stuff, and then the other decks being that much boosted. So, well, I hope you enjoyed the tier list. Let me know what your personal X1 tier list is, and I'll see you in the next video. And until that next video, remember to stay hungry until you get a taste of victory.